So verily, yoga is not for him who eats too much or abstains too much from eating. It is not for him, O Arjun, who sleeps too much or keeps awake too much. For the man who is temperate in food and recreation, who is restrained in his actions, whose sleep and waking are regulated, there ensues discipline, yoga, which destroys all sorrow. So this is quite clear that what we're looking for is balance. So someone who eats too much or eats too little or sleeps too much or sleeps too little will not be able to attain yoga, and therefore we should be trying to find a balance. So Sri Krishna is describing the characteristics of the person who can attain yoga. So the Gita here is giving us such clear guidance. So in the path of yoga, it's said that one should not eat too much, because such a person will not be able to make his thoughts focused on one particular thing. So Guruji has an example of a story which is quite funny, and he describes how he used to give a seminar in India on 3 days, on Friday, Saturday and Sunday, and these would take place in the evenings, and then on Friday, and then the whole day on Saturday and Sunday. And the purpose of these meditation courses was to allow for people to focus their minds. So there was always a group of about 30 or 40 people, and they would ask questions and they would talk, and Guruji would give them suggestions. And after the first lesson, Guruji explained to them that meditation is not something that can be taught and learnt straight away. The first 10% of the path of meditation is filled with difficulties, and the majority of people actually give up meditation because of the difficulties and frustrations. And the consequence of this is that they fall from the path of attaining the big wealth that's actually inside them. And Guruji suggests that we unwrap this gift in order to find it, but obviously it comes along with challenges. Shri Krishna shows us how to do this in this verse. And what he says is that a person who gives up quickly loses this opportunity to unravel the gift that's inside him. And Guruji explains that this effort that he tried to give was made on these weekends where people could focus their minds. And after the Sunday session, he would ask people to stay back and perhaps describe the feelings that they had experienced during this dhyan, during this meditation. And they would describe it. And what he would say to them is that I'm not a dhyan yogi myself, because I don't know if I've been able to attain it, but I'm trying to give you some tips on how to unravel this gift within inside yourself. But what I would advise is that you go home and you meditate at home. So what happened is a person called him at 6 a.m. on the Monday morning after the Sunday session, and Guruji himself was getting up from his own dhyan, and the phone rang. And this person described to Guruji that he was really happy and he had some good news. So Guruji obviously said, well, what is it? What are your good news? And he said, well, as soon as this seminar finished, I went home to perform dhyan, to perform meditation, and I had oneness with God. I had samadhi for 1.5 hours. And Guruji said, well, this is a bit strange, because you only meditated for 1.5 hours when you went home. How did this happen? Please explain it to me. And Guruji, and this guest said to Guruji, well, I did exactly what you said. I went home and had a bath to cleanse myself and to purify myself. I sat down on my seat and I tried to focus my mind. I looked at the clock and it was 8:30 p.m. and I made my vision fixed at the tip of my nose. So far so good. Slowly and slowly I began to see a light. And as soon as I saw the light, I closed my eyes, because you said that as soon as one person sees the light, there's no reason to look outside. I closed my eyes, and then when I opened my eyes, I saw the clock and it was 10 p.m. I had performed dhyan for 1.5 hours. So Guruji said, oh wow, that's great. Well, could you please tell me what you did before you and after you meditated? And this particular person said to Guruji that, well, as soon as I came home, I had a bath and I sat down to meditate. But just at that point, my wife called me and asked me to come for dinner. And then she said, you can do whatever you want after you've had dinner. So I went to eat. And during the meditation, you said, this is the person explained to Guruji, that during the meditation one should keep as few desires as possible. And that was my biggest desire, that I could go and eat, and after that I could concentrate and do what I wanted. So I sat down to eat. And I was at the seminar at lunchtime, so when my wife's brother and family had come over for lunch, I didn't eat anything. And my wife had cooked and I hadn't eaten, and everything was very delicious. So when I went home, I sat down to eat and then meditated after eating. I closed my eyes at 8:30, and when I opened them, it was 10 o'clock. And I'd attained samadhi, he said again, I'd attained samadhi for 1.5 hours. So then Guruji straight away understood what this person had done for 1.5 hours. And he said, when you sat down to meditate, what was your position? And he explained to Guruji, well, just like as you said, I sat erect with my body and neck and my throat in one particular fixed line. And when I opened my eyes, my head had fallen slightly to the right. So Basically, he'd fallen asleep. And he thought this was very lucky because his head had fallen to the right-hand side. And Guruji said to him, "My dear, you've actually fallen asleep. After being tired for the whole day, you went home, you had a bath, you ate a big meal and lots of potatoes. And of course, because you were hungry, you ate more, your wife gave you more to eat than normal. So this is exactly what you did." And therefore, this story is in relation to this verse, because Guruji is saying yoga is not for someone who eats too much. Because doctors and scientists say it very nicely, that when a person eats too much, then what happens is the food goes into the stomach and the blood circulation goes more towards the stomach. And this is where the blood circulation is needed. And when this happens, there's blood in the stomach and less blood in the head, and therefore the brain cells become sluggish, and as a result, the person becomes sleepy. And this is why, in this example, this person was feeling very sleepy after he'd eaten. The blood in the body goes where it's needed, and in this instance, it was in the stomach, and the pressure is reduced elsewhere, and this is why the person became sleepy. So on the opposite side, Sri Krishna is saying in this verse that even a person who abstains from eating and drinking is also not successful in attaining to yoga. Because what if you don't eat? Your body becomes weak. Sri Krishna says that then you will not be steady. So this is a very practical path, and it's basically explaining that we should seek a balance. He's challenged these basic beliefs that maybe in many sects they have. You know, in some Jain examples, I met people in India on this trip that hadn't eaten for ages. But Guruji here is saying that that in this verse, you know, if we don't eat for 10, 15 days, then our body is becoming weak. And Sri Krishna is saying that fasting is perhaps a different thing, but when you try to perform dhyan, so meditation, this will not work. The reason for this is the senses will become weak, the body doesn't get its nutrients, and this will make the body weak. A body that's weak will demand less, and therefore one cannot say that they have become properly steady. They can't become sthir, and they have not properly controlled their mind and their senses. There's no strength left in the senses. So Guruji gives the example that if he doesn't eat for 1 or 2 months, then he'll lose his interest in driving around Chapati Beach, where they have lots of food snacks. But this doesn't make him a yogi, because as soon as he'll start to eat and drink water again, he'll want to go back immediately to Chapati Beach. And this is not because Chapati Beach is a bad place. It's just to say that the wishes that he had previously have been suppressed because he didn't have any strength. So making the senses weak in order to suppress one's wishes is not the true path to yoga. The same amount of strength remains as in the senses as before. And that's why Sri Krishna has used the word yukta. If you look at this verse 17, it's numerous places. And Sri Krishna uses that in the 6th chapter of the Gita everywhere, because it's a very important word. And yukta is, the meaning of the word yukta is balance. So Sri Krishna says that yoga is not for him who sleeps too much or keeps awake too much. And every person, and I'm guilty of this, I love to sleep, but every person has to decide in his mind what the right balance is for himself. So what is the right balance for yourself? Who can attain yoga? Sri Krishna says that a person should be balanced in food and in their recreation and in their sleep and in their actions, so therefore their waking should also be balanced. These are all necessary things, because if we have balance, then we can continue to get disciplined. And it's a natural flow. And once we have discipline, and we'll have yoga, and yoga will destroy all sorrow. This yoga will happen for a person who is steady and someone who follows rules. So if we look at the example of, Guruji's given the example of the body being a whole city, many laws are needed to run a city like Mumbai or London. There's lots of traffic and lots of traffic wardens that people with people telling you to go left or right, and these are rules that may need to be followed. They're not necessarily followed in India, but let's say here, you can't really throw rubbish wherever you like, and these rules are important. So just like rules are needed in a city, the body is also a city, and the scriptures give an example that there are 7 million cells inside our body, and each of these cells are like a family. So if we think about it, again, look at the example of Mumbai, it has a population of about 20 million people. If there's an average of 5 people in each family, then there are 4 million families in Mumbai. There are 4 million houses, let's say 4.5 million houses. 4.5 million houses, and the whole city of Mumbai needs rules, and it won't be able to be governed without rules. And likewise, in the body, there's 7 million houses, so many more. So each and every cell that we have within us is like a house. They all have a head of the household, and that's the nucleus. There are lots of platelets and many other things around the nucleus. And if we want to govern all these cells in the body, then of course we need rules. We need a system. If you, again, wish to run a city, you need rules about when to release water from the baths and the sinks and the toilets. And if you don't release the water, then there'll be a problem. And You also have to consider when food can be available from the grocers. There should be a regular supply of food, a regular supply of gas and petrol from the petrol pump. So all these things are systems that are required in order for people to get what they need on a daily basis, and only on this basis can the city work. So in the same way, our body is like a big city, which is called Puri by Sri Krishna. So if we look in, there's the word Navad Vare Pure, which means the city of 9 gates. And each of the populace should be able to get whatever they need in this city. There should be a balance of food and recreation. The shop, for example, shops used to be closed on Sundays because it used to be a day of rest, and our bodies should also have one day of rest. If not, then there'll be many difficulties. In the same way, after working for 12 or 16 hours, the shop should be closed. There should be a balance of sleep and of waking, but the shop should be awake again at 8 o'clock in the morning. And likewise, our body needs to have a system. Guruji gives the example that when we need petrol in our car, we immediately have to fill up the petrol, otherwise the car doesn't work. But often, when we're working, and all city people are probably guilty of doing this too, when you're hungry, you don't go off and eat lunch. You stop and you say, no, I'll just eat at 1, or then I'll eat at 2, then I'll eat at 3, 3 becomes 4, and then you forget completely that you haven't even been to fill your bodies with what we require. So the food that, is the petrol for a car, and you just say, I'll continue to finish off the work that I'm doing. So this is why the bodies have difficulties. One must keep a good balance. And again, if you are asked to describe in one word what the main message is from Sri Krishna in the 6th chapter, it's balance, which is yukta. Only such a person can have dhyan, which is meditation, and only such a person can make his thoughts one-minded and one-focused, and this person will understand the right balance. For such a person, he will be a disciple of yoga, and this will destroy all the sorrows. And all of this should be done following rules. So this moves us on to the next verse,